This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, we now bring you a discussion on Prime Minister's Mann Ki Baat. The participants are Ashok Tandon, political analyst, and K.V. Prasad, journalist.
The Prime Minister today addressed the nation in his monthly Mann Ki Baat. It was very interesting because I think if you look at the picture from the distance, he addressed three C's in one E, which I would categorize as culture, creativity, cleanliness, which is a favorite subject, and of course entrepreneurship, which again is one of the big projects of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Turns out, if you look at the big picture that emerged from Prime Minister's Mann Ki Baat, he started on a very positive note, remembering and reminding the people that just as the country enjoys a century by a famous cricketer Sachin Tendulkar, he had great happiness in announcing that India had touched 100 unicorns with a figure of something like 25 lakh crores today. And saying this when his own Mann Ki Baat is probably fast heading towards a century mark. Tanasa, how would you look at what you heard today?
You are very right. He devoted quite a lot of time on the startup achievement of India. But before we go into details of today's Mann Ki Baat, I think one very significant piece of information which perhaps many of our listeners may not be knowing is that the sign language version of Mann Ki Baat is broadcast on Doordarshan Bharati, which is a very significant development. And then it is broadcast on the entire network of All India Radio and Doordarshan. AIR News website, mobile app, and it's also streamed live on the YouTube channels of the AIR News, DD News, PMO, and the Information and Broadcasting Ministry. Now, this, I think, very important piece of information we must share with our listeners. And Prasad, soon after Hindi broadcast of the PM's monthly Mann Ki Baat, the program then is broadcast in regional languages also. So I thought that's one thing which normally, invariably, people don't remember, and they depend only on All India Radio or Mann Ki Baat. And we all know that this monthly program, it was 89th episode, and the aim of this program, which the Prime Minister has been outlining in his every episode, is to establish dialogue with the citizens on issues of their day-to-day governance. Now, having said that, I agree with you fully that the emphasis today on this achievements of the startup was that now India has achieved the target of 100 unicorns, which, as you also very rightly said, was 25 lakh crores. And he said that this particular thing, that the startup achievement, as now a time has come when we will get to see achieve new heights on this field. But he elaborated further, and he said that this 100 unicorn, the icon, the target which we achieved, and it is also the annual growth rate of India's unicorn is more than those of the USA, UK, and many other countries. And in the coming years, of course, there will be sharp spike in these numbers as well. So I think the very fact that the PM emphasized on this unicorn, because they are not diversifying. They are operating in many fields like e-commerce, technology, ED technology, biotechnology, and all these aspects are now taking India to new heights. And India's startup ecosystem is not limited to just cities. That is very significant. Entrepreneurs are emerging from smaller cities and towns as well. And this is what India is all about. And, we have huge talent, people who have innovative ideas, and that is how they are creating wealth. I think it was very significant about talking about the startup and all that. And then he also talked about the mentors. The mentors also a very important role who have dedicated themselves to promote startup in India. It was a very significant thing.
Yeah, it turns out that's very right. And as you pointed out, as I mentioned at the beginning, his accent on entrepreneurship in this country, and for a country which is young, where we always talk of demographic dividend, the fact that the youth of this country are coming up with innovative ideas and encouraged by the Prime Minister's own vision, looking at innovative solutions in a vast and diverse country like ours. I think in the same spirit, he did mention about the fact that self-help groups are doing a different kind of a service, which sometimes comes to notice. Otherwise, he himself had highlighted a couple of people from Tamil Nadu and Thanjavur, where somebody has worked on a self-help group, or similarly other areas. And also, I think one of the most touching stories or narrative which he mentioned was of a young girl who probably her name was Kalpana, where he mentioned that girl picked up Kannada language even though she herself is from Uttarakhand, Joshimath in particular. And what makes it more poignant was the fact that she was struck by tuberculosis and had lost of vision, but that did not deter her from achieving it thanks to a professor from Mysore who actually pushed her on the path. So I think those bright spots really brighten up on a morning, on a Sunday, when everybody is looking towards how the week should begin.
Certainly, another very significant aspect of today's Mann Ki Baat was the Prime Minister's emphasis on duty. And he repeatedly said that we can empower the society and we can even empower the entire country only by walking on the path of duty. So duty is very significant. And then he also talked about India's diversity. And he said India is a rich treasure of many languages, scripts, dialects, different clothing, food, culture, different regions is our identity. And that is very significant. And this he emphasized in that context. And then he gave the example of Kalpana, as you very rightly said. So, women self-help group and as well as the diversity aspect were very important highlights of it. You have already talked about the example of it. And the living example, which the Prime Minister gave example was, they are the spirit of Ek Bharat Shrestha Bharat. And this is the spirit of which particularly Prime Minister emphasizes in all episodes of Mann Ki Baat.
Prince Saab, as I mentioned, I think one of the C's that the Prime Minister never forgets to emphasize is the accent on cleanliness, something which he has been saying from day one and inculcated the spirit of under the Swachh Bharat scheme. And today, I think very significant point that he made was the many people from different parts of the country traveled from the Char Dham Yatra as the holy shrines open up in the hills. I think the fact that he mentioned that people of that area are also feel upset or when a lot of garbage is left behind by tourists or pilgrims, and how some people have also taken upon themselves on the pilgrimage itself to try and clean up the areas. I think that's significant, the fact that we link it to environment at a time when everybody is looking out, and he talks about the June 5th environment. So that's why I said the connect for culture and cleanliness, because this has been often been said that areas around the temple in our country sometimes need more cleanliness than what we see. So I think the accent is very significant, Tanasa.
Yes, because from day one, when he assumed power in 2014, Prime Minister, launched a mass movement of Swachh Bharat. And he has been emphasizing it repeatedly, saying that it should not be left to the government agencies to keep the country clean or keep our environment clean. All of us have to engage ourselves, and therefore a large number of people and NGOs and social workers, they are doing their best to keep cleanliness. But unfortunately, when we see on social media some pictures of garbage lying, and particularly in this context, the Prime Minister said about near the Kedarnath temple, and that really, upsets everybody. And therefore, he emphasized that we have to keep the country clean, and he appreciates, in fact, he names those individuals who are engaged in the cleanliness drive, making it a mission. And these people get appreciation from the highest level of the Prime Minister. And that should encourage every citizen to at least keep his surroundings clean. So the very pathetic scenes of garbage lying around the different areas, and particularly near the religious places, is something which is very shameful for all of us. And that is exactly what the Prime Minister emphasizes in every episode. But I think another very significant feature of today's Mann Ki Baat was the forthcoming 8th International Yoga Day on June 21st. And the Prime Minister said this time the theme of Yoga Day is Yoga for Humanity. And he urged all of us to celebrate Yoga Day with great enthusiasm as people all over the world have been celebrating every year, not only in India, but even in our neighboring countries. You know, the United Nations has adopted as 21st June as International Yoga Day. It's a huge tribute to India's cultural heritage of thousands of years. And yoga has got nothing to do with any particular religion. And that is exactly, and in that context, he went on to caution people about the corona. He said the situation now, by and large, is looking better than earlier across the whole world. And on account of more and more vaccination coverage, people now are going out more than ever. And therefore, a lot of preparations are also being seen all over the world for Yoga Day. And he invariably, in every episode of Mann Ki Baat, reminds us about precautions we have to continue to take about the corona pandemic, and which has realized the overreaching importance of health in our life. And yoga, being a great medium, is ensuring the same. People are experiencing how much physical, spiritual, intellectual well-being is receiving a boost through yoga. So emphasis on Yoga Day was in fact, very important hallmark of today's Mann Ki Baat.
And I think he also flagged a very innovative idea or some new experiment that is being looked at this time, what he called the Guardian Ring, when a yoga event will be held from east to west as the sun rises. So in a 24-hour cycle, different cities and different countries will go through the yogic postures, which will add to a different kind of a feeling. Having said that, I think turns up, we also looked at the fact that culture is connected beyond boundaries. And I think one significant is the Prime Minister recalled on his recent visit to Japan, where he had a very hectic schedule attending the Quad Summit and other things. He having met a person, Hiroshi Koike, who directing the Mahabharata project. And this person traveling from one country in Asia to other parts, producing parts of Mahabharata with local artists and local musicians. So this is Indian culture traveling beyond the shores that we always thought we know of.
Yes, he also mentioned about the way Ramayana has been depicted in Japan with all the characters. So, in fact, it was a rather very pleasant surprise for the listeners all over the world that in Japan, India's cultural heritage of great epics of Mahabharata and Ramayana are being seen by the people in Japan, and they are learning a lot about India's cultural heritage, and that was also a very significant thing. But towards the end, the Prime Minister talked about the birds and animals in the scorching summer heat, and he in fact urged people to keep water-filled pots and provide food to them. And so it's a basic elementary thing, but the Prime Minister of the country remembers and he reminds the people their duty towards the birds and animals as well. So in all that, I think Prasad, the Mann Ki Baat has been an interactive session. The way he talks to the people, and then towards the end, he invites suggestions before the Mann Ki Baat and after each episode. He invites suggestions from the people, the feedback from the people, so that in his next Mann Ki Baat episode, he could concentrate and deal with those issues which people send him as feedback. So that is why it's a two-way traffic. It's not a monologue. It's not a broadcast to the nation. It's an interactive session which the Prime Minister does every month, and it has continued uninterrupted so far, and it is becoming very popular as well on all the platforms. That's very significant.
Thank you for telling our listeners that the new innovation that All India Radio Sign Language has come up for people, in particular on the Mann Ki Baat. And I think before we wind up, to mention giving back to the society or trying to help the animals. I remember every Mann Ki Baat onset of summer, the Prime Minister never ever forgot to remind people to put a bowl of water outside their homes or wherever possible so that the birds can come and quench their thirst. Similarly, in open spaces for animals to do that. I think in overall, as you said, the interactive session, he helps people understand as to what the Prime Minister is looking at and also what people are looking at, and together how they can build the nation. Thank you.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on Prime Minister's Mann Ki Baat. The participants were Ashok Tandon, political analyst, and KV Prasad, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsdtalks@gmail.com.